Shabbat Shalom. Professor Jack Wertheimer is a person whom I admire and respect. Professor of American Jewish History and past provost of the Jewish Theological Seminary, where I was ordained as a rabbi. Author of more books and articles than I dare count, Wertheimer has shaped not just his given field, but the thinking of thousands of rabbis, cantors, Jewish educators, and professionals, myself included. Professor Wertheimer's distinguished career has never been consigned just to the ivory tower. He's deeply invested in the well-being of American Jewry. Most importantly, he holds the greatest calling card of all, a Shem Tov, a good name. From the classes I took with him at JTS to the gracious counsel he's extended to me over the years, to his abiding menschlichkeit, knowing and unknowingly, he's had a profound influence on me. Over the years, he's spoken at our synagogue on many occasions, a relationship I hope continues into the future. So when his latest article was published this week by Mosaic magazine, I was, as always, eager to read it. Timed to coincide with the arrival of the holidays, Wertheimer's article reflects his findings from dozens of interviews he's conducted with rabbis of North American synagogues on the subjects of the high holiday services. Those interviewed were entirely almost non-Orthodox rabbis, conservative, reform, renewal, and otherwise. In full disclosure, Wertheimer did reach out to me to participate in his study, but our schedules couldn't align, and we never did connect. Since reading his article, I've been left to wonder what I would have said had we had the chance to speak. Wertheimer begins by noting the surge in worshipers in synagogues on the high holidays. In some communities, a 10 or 20-fold increase over normal Shabbat attendance. The substance of his article is an inventory of the tactics employed by non-Orthodox rabbis. It's not clear if he interviewed any cantors to engage these once or twice a year Jews. No longer, he explains, do rabbis guilt or chastise their congregants for coming only once a year. Their focus, rather, is to have congregants feel good about their decision to come and draw attention to themes such as self-reflection, self-improvement, and spiritual renewal. Other efforts include email messages sent to congregants during the month of Elul as a means of spiritual preparation, or the introduction of new machzors, the high holiday prayer books with updated translations, transliterations, and contemporary commentaries. Squads of greeters are put to work to offer warm welcome, and moments are created to acknowledge those people who, in the year gone by, have suffered a loss, had a new baby, or experienced a life cycle event. A buffet of service options offered, alternative prayer services for families of all stripes and types, interfaith, families with young children, children's services, and more. Within the service itself, Wertheimer notes a series of transformations. Congregants are invited to bow down with their clergy at the Aleinu prayer. The Yom Kippur catalog of sins is updated to include contemporary human failings. Meditative Yizkor service, memorial services are introduced to elicit laughter and tears vis-a-vis our deceased loved ones. Wertheimer makes much ado about the inability of American Jews to hold fast to a traditional conception of God, and the willingness of rabbis to create space for congregants with a range of beliefs, conventional, unconventional, or none at all. And then, of course, there's the music. Most Reform and conservative synagogues have begun to substitute updated compositions for classical high holiday melodies, ranging from Shlomo Carlebach, songs from Jewish youth groups or summer camps, a Leonard Cohen Hallelujah, or even adaptations of Stevie Wonder and Elton John. Using musical instruments has become standard practice, and enormous effort goes into what one rabbi calls high production values. Reading Wertheimer's article this week before the holidays, I was struck by how many of his observations reflect our communal practice here at Park Avenue Synagogue, including our efforts to be warm, inclusive, engaging, innovative musically and liturgically, and to make the service more relevant and personal. From the person greeting you at the door to the message from the pulpit to the prayer book you use, we recognize that people are accessing Jewish life from a variety of vantage points, and you know what? You're all welcome. And of course, everything we do, we try to do with production excellence. It would simply blow your mind to know how much effort goes into making our high holiday services as special as they are, especially from the music team under Cantor Schwartz's leadership and the operations team led by our executive director, Beryl Chernoff. However, what quickly became clear was that while there was something familiar and even initially validating about reading the practices of my clergy colleagues across the country, Wertheimer's article is meant to be a searing critique, not a celebration of what he discovered. Synagogues have come to align themselves, he writes, quote, with faddish nostrums like hospitality, diversity, spirituality, creativity, non-judgmentalism, tikkun olam, and personalized religion. In Wertheimer's judgment, the uncomfortable reality of synagogue life is that American Jews are not at home in their tradition, in reading Hebrew and belief in God, and the very basics of traditional prayer, davening. In the words of one conservative rabbi he interviewed, "I am a docent in a museum. As we wander through the galleries, I point out each exhibit and explain its content and meaning." It is because of this Jewish cultural illiteracy that synagogues have been forced to, quote, resort to every conceivable gimmick to help initiated relate. In such a telling, synagogues, in reimagining themselves to fit the fashionable tropes of the day, have become enablers for the least common denominator as opposed to embodiments, quote, of tested millennia-long tradition. In Wertheimer's own words, in short, in an effort to work around their attendees' lack of cultural literacy, synagogues are not only ratifying that lack, but absorbing into Jewish life much that is inimical to Jewish life. It's quite an article. I've left copies outside the sanctuary, though I intend to have them gone by tomorrow night. I think part of the article's power and sting is not just what it says, but who is saying it. It's one thing for an Orthodox Jew to criticize non-Orthodox Jews, or an avowed secularist to critique organized religion. But in this case, the cutting reflections are voiced by a non-Orthodox American Jewish thought leader who, incidentally, has trained generations of non-Orthodox American Jewish leadership. Reading Wertheimer feels a bit like reading a Philip Roth novel, as he unforgivingly pokes fun at shallow Jewish suburbanites that he knows only too well and from which he himself emerged. You would like to say there's something untoward about Wertheimer muddying his own until you realize that your discomfort stems from the fact that his is an insider critique that hits a bit too close to home. We all know, especially at this time of year, that criticism from people who know you stings far more than those of a stranger. Wertheimer's partisan critique is important because several of his observations are worth reflection and programmatic response. First, that so many Jews show up on Rosh Hashanah having not entered a synagogue since last Yom Kippur and expect to connect to tradition is not just curious, it's crazy. It would be equivalent of someone thinking they want to take up jogging and then give that thought expression by running the New York Marathon cold every year. The high holiday prayers are long, theologically and liturgically complex, and meant to serve as a capstone, not an on-ramp to Jewish prayer. Second, Wertheimer's right in that American Jews are alienated from tradition, Hebraically, theologically, and functionally, the how-tos of Jewish prayer and observance. It is what Talmudic literature calls a tinok shenishba, an individual lacking in the basics of Jewish life and living. Any rabbi who has served American Jewry for 10 minutes knows better than to assume a parishioner's intimacy with Jewish practice on any given high holiday, or for that matter, Shabbat morning. It's unfortunate that Wertheimer relays his observations with such bite, all the more so because he himself created the community in question. But that doesn't mean his insights are without merit. The crisis of American Jewry is the existence of a Jewry who identify as Jews and are even proud to be Jewish, but who are not quite sure what that means and how to give it expression. Finally, Wertheimer is correct in his caution that if a synagogue always seeks to meet people where they are and be all things to all people, then at a certain point that synagogue ceases to stand for anything. Not every choice need find sanction within the Jewish community. Not every liberal value is a Jewish value, and no synagogue, especially in New York City where there are so many good choices, should seek to accommodate everybody. A good synagogue, and there are many good synagogues, must define its mission, which means setting boundaries, which by definition means it cannot be all things to all people. These points, amongst others, are but some of the reasons why Wertheimer is right. Now let me tell you why he's wrong. First and foremost, for a historian, Wertheimer's argument is strikingly ahistorical. I honestly have no idea what Wertheimer is referring to when he writes of a tested millennia-long tradition. Jewish prayer, Jewish practice, Jewish theology, Jewish communal structure, Jewish everything has always been shaped by social and historical context. To propose that there has been some static set of beliefs from Moses to Moses Maimonides to Moses Mendelssohn is simply inaccurate. To suggest that the melodies of the high holiday prayers have not developed over time, reflecting the times and the places that Jewish communities have recited those prayers, does a disservice to the rich history of cantorial music. To submit that there is not a layered history to the high holiday prayer book simply does not square with the evolutionary process that is part and parcel of our tradition. As another JTS history professor and chancellor, the late Gershon Cohen, taught, Judaism has always assimilated elements from the non-Jewish world in which it functioned. Does liberal Judaism have the balance right between tradition and change, between healthy and unhealthy assimilation of non-Jewish influences? That's a fair conversation to have. But what's not a fair conversation is a suggestion that the definition of authentic rabbinical or cantorial leadership is to model a shields-up posture infused by some atavistic loyalty to a monolithic and ultimately arbitrary definition of what Judaism is. The job of rabbinical leadership is to make Judaism come alive for every generation of Jews, defending tradition first and as needed making changes, to meet Jews where they are and inspire them to be where they can be. It's not clear from Wertheimer's criticism of synagogues whether his brief is with Jews who attend or the clergy who serve them, but there's an aspect of Wertheimer's argument that I just truly don't understand, because if taken to its logical conclusion, he seems to be saying that forward-thinking clergy should chastise their high holiday Jews for failing to make regular a practice of observing a static Judaism that is entirely alien to them. Reading Wertheimer, I'm reminded of the old quip, "A leader without followers is just a guy taking a walk." I am no sociologist of religion, but I cannot grant that within Wertheimer's insight is a secret to a vibrant Jewish future. And as for his observations regarding the willingness of rabbis to create space for Jews questioning their belief in God, I will only respond with a personal anecdote of a conversation I'll never forget from my childhood rabbi when I told him that I had a lot of trouble, given the hurt and suffering I see in this world, to believe in a God who takes out a book each year to determine who will live and who will die. And you know what that rabbi said to me in response? Said, "Elliot, I have a lot of trouble with that too." And you know what I became? A rabbi. For a rabbi to show his or her humanity, for a rabbi to express doubts, for a rabbi to validate the theological strugglings of a searching Jew, that is not a betrayal of the rabbinic calling. That is the most authentic expression of what it means to be a rabbi. There is a lot that is right in Wertheimer's article, and there is a lot that is wrong, and I have more to say. Good to be back. Nevertheless, his writing does come from a place of love. for the Jewish people and conservative Judaism, and should serve, as always, as a prompt for a vibrant debate on directions for American Jewish life. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem et asher yeshno po imanu ve'et asher einenu po. You stand this day, all of you, not with you alone, but those standing here with us this day, and those who are not here this day, says the Torah reading. As long as there has been a covenant, Jewish leadership has had an eye on those present, those who came before, and those not yet here. Come tomorrow night for the start of the high holidays. The Erev Rosh Hashanah service is the one high holiday service at Park Avenue for which no one needs a ticket. You are all welcome. We will meet you where you are, and we will lift you up to where you aspire to be. Come hear traditional melodies, come hear new ones, and maybe you'll even hear Leonard Cohen and Stevie Wonder. Here at Park Avenue Synagogue, each and every day, we serve the Jewish past, the Jewish present, and the Jewish future. The health of our covenant and community depends on it. Shabbat Shalom.